What high school doesn't teach about budgeting? Young adults aren't building healthy spending habits. When I told my financial literacy class we'd be learning about budgeting, one of the students raised their hand and said the following: "I've been waiting for you to teach this lesson. Every time I get my paycheck from my part-time job, I spend the entire thing and have no idea where it goes." Students aren't learning healthy spending habits, which carries into adulthood. Learning about budgeting is imperative to survive in the real world. Over half of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. In an article from CNBC from April 2023, Jessica Dickler wrote that 58% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. This means that $0 are going into a savings account. Zero. Nothing goes into a retirement account. Nothing goes into an investment account. Of course, we can blame the current financial crisis, rising costs and inflation, and the lack of an increase in the minimum wage. But because this article only intends to address the individual's responsibility, we'll save that for another time. Living paycheck to paycheck is dangerous. In the event of an emergency, 58% of people cannot afford to pay for it. They will suffer immensely if their car breaks down, they get an unexpected medical bill, or are in desperate need of buying a new laptop for work. No one wants to be in this position. This is why it's important to budget. If you budget, you can save money for an emergency. If you lose your job, you won't have to worry about what you'll do when rent or the mortgage is due. Since most high schools aren't teaching financial literacy, most students graduate and don't know how to manage their next paycheck. If you don't learn how to budget, you risk becoming a part of the 58% of people that are living paycheck to paycheck. There are 3 steps to take to budget successfully. I asked my student to show me what they spent their money on. I instructed them to log into their bank account and check their most recent expenses. They told me part of the money went to gas and fast food. Most of their money went to spending time with their friends. So what should you do? I asked them. Not spend as much money on friends? They replied sheepishly. And not buy as much fast food. I told them, the first step. When you are planning out your budget, you should look up the cost of living in your area. By doing so, you can learn what income you need to live on your own. Looking up the cost of living also informs you how your money will need to be distributed once you get a job. The best website to find the cost of living in your area is the one created by the Economic Policy Institute because it shows you the cost of living, on average, in each county in the United States. It tells you how much you'll spend depending on if you're single or married or have any kids. Screenshot from the Economic Policy Institute showing the cost of living in Travis County, TX. Of course, this is an estimate. This will not apply to every individual. For example, if you walk to work, you can cut transportation costs to 0. If you go out to eat frequently, then you should increase the food costs, and so on. Once you find your county, you can see how much you need to earn a year for you to survive on your own. Notice in the image that doesn't include a savings account. That means anyone who earned under $42,000 a year is not contributing money to a savings account. This is when we look at how we budget our money. The second step. Once you see what income you need to survive in your county, you can start distributing your budget. The most popular distribution is the one created by Dave Ramsey. This means certain expenses shouldn't be more than a certain percentage of your paycheck. For example, housing should be no more than 25%. Transportation should be no more than 10%, gas plus car payment. Food should be no more than 10%. And so on. Feel free to click on the link above to find a pie chart of the budgeting wheel, which you can use for future reference. Should the budgeting wheel be followed religiously? It depends. For example, a person who's living paycheck to paycheck should not be donating 10% of their paycheck to charity. They should focus on themselves first and foremost. Once they have a higher income, they can adjust their budget accordingly. However, when it comes to housing, the 25% rule should be followed religiously. Why? Following the 25% rule means you can set aside money in the event your washer stops working. It means you can afford to pay for repairs if your car won't start the next morning. If you choose to ignore the 25% rule, then it'll be harder to pay for any unexpected expenses that might come up in the future. For example, when we look at Travis County, Austin, Texas, a person makes on average $3,497 a month. However, the budgeting wheel the Economic Policy Institute is using is relying on a 30% budget toward housing, not 25%. In certain counties in the U.S., it might be difficult to find a decent home using the 25% budget. Note that by decent, I don't mean a 2-story apartment or townhouse that has access to a pool and a gym. I mean decent as in near your workplace or in a safe neighborhood. If we follow the 25% rule for the $3,497 a month income, a person should not spend more than $874 on housing, regardless of whether that's a mortgage or rent. If you go to apartments.com and look for apartments in Austin, Texas, as of this writing, you'll find over 600 listings for under $874. It's realistic and doable to find a decent apartment following the 25% rule. If it's possible, look for housing that isn't more than 25% of your income. That way you have more flexibility when it comes to other expenses, like saving or transportation. The third step. The third and most important step is to track your spending. I like to use a monthly budget tracker, like the one provided for free by Google Sheets. If you go to sheets.google.com, you can choose to create a new Sheets. To find the monthly budget sheets, click on Template Gallery instead. Screenshot by the author of Google Sheets. Scroll down on the Template Gallery and click on Monthly Budget, which will open the sheets below. Screenshot by the author of a monthly budget tracker created by Google Sheets. If you have a basic understanding of Google Sheets, then you can learn how to use this pretty quickly. If not, feel free to watch this video below that gives a tutorial on how to use the monthly budget tracker made by Google Sheets. Open page 2, called Transactions, and input any purchases you make that month under Expenses. Label the date, how much you spent, what you paid for, and under what category it falls under. The category section is the most important. This will separate your wants from your needs, something that most people don't take into consideration when budgeting. Your needs are things you have to pay for, like your rent, utility bills, or groceries. Your wants are things you don't need to survive, like going out to dinner, traveling, or gift giving. At the end of the month, you can see how much you spent and determine what expenses you need to cut for next month. When I began tracking my expenses, I immediately noticed I spend too much on going out to eat. When you see it laid out on the monthly budget planner, you realize how big of a dent certain behaviors are leaving on your wallet. After I realized this, I started cutting that behavior in the next month. It's important to understand the differences between essential expenses and non-essential expenses because it helps you make informed spending decisions that will benefit you in the long term. If you don't want to use the monthly budget tracker from Google Sheets, there are plenty of budget tracking apps available on the App or Play Store that you could download to use instead. Final thoughts. Learning how to budget is important in setting financial goals. This is done best when you research how much you need to survive in your area and determine how much you should be spending on housing, food, and utilities. Distinguishing needs from wants will empower you to make more informed financial decisions, which means you won't be living paycheck to paycheck. This will benefit you long term, as you'll be able to create a savings account to use in the event of an emergency.